Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot and welcome to my June journaling video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the pages that I did in a couple of different journals for June. So I have my daily tarot journal, I have my self-care Sunday journal, my goddess journal, and then I thought I'd just show you guys a couple of pages from this one. This is a very personal journal, so I'm not going to show you a ton of them. But I just wanted to share with you a little bit about what I do in this one as well. And it is not tarot related, but I thought you guys might enjoy it anyway. So we'll go ahead and get started with my daily tarot journal. So for June, I created just my usual spread. And if you saw my video, or if you're interested in checking it out, I do have a video on how I journal. So I talk about how I do this same layout pretty much month after month after month, which allows me to keep things really consistent and also keeps things moving pretty quickly because, as you'll see, I do tend to put a lot into my journals. So I really wanted to come up with a structure and a process that was really streamlined to save as much time as possible. I do have of course, use this little tab, but I've also, what I found has been helpful this month is to use a bookmark. And I'm just using this, the one that came with my Art of Love Tarot, to keep it turned, or to keep it to mark the front of my month. And then this little tab, the little ribbon goes, week by week, basically. And so I just found that that was really helpful. So I just wanted to mention that because I have been including that and just leaving it at the beginning of my month page, just so that I can quickly flip back and forth to that whenever I need to, maybe note something on my calendar or note the decks that I'm working with. So for June, I just have, I have the summer solstice listed. If you've probably noticed, if you watch my other videos on my other journaling videos, I'm kind of having a progression to this more sort of torn look, whereas in the very beginning, well, even as just really last month, I guess. So as you can see, in previous months, I was doing things a little bit more, modern, a little bit more streamlined. And moving into May, I started kind of using some more torn papers. And then in June, I went like full on torn papers. You can see that the style has kind of just, it evolves. It changes according to my moods. And that's one of the things that I like about doing this type of journal, because I can look back at it and that does give me some indication of where I am at because of some health issues. Like in February and March, I was really focused on health, and I think that that's really reflected in my journals, just in the type of imagery that I used. Of course, the types of decks that I used and the readings that I did also reflect that as well. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out real quick. So I have my monthly page, I have my card of the month. Now I do a yearly spread, a year ahead spread, which I did with my Llewellyn Tarot. However, when I pull a card to represent that card for the month, I tend to pull from a deck that has energy that represents that month to me. So this is the Chariot from the Yolanda Tarot. And this Chariot to me just has that kind of June fiery energy. It's also my birth card, so I really like this card in this image. So I wanted to use a Chariot that I really liked. So that just had that energy for me. And you can see back in previous months that I've just used whatever card for whatever deck really resonates with that energy. Even though I did my year ahead spread with my Llewellyn, I don't incorporate the images from the Llewellyn into every month. I choose a deck that really represents that energy for that month. I have my monthly reflections, which always gets added in at the end of the month. So when I'm laying out these pages, I always leave space here for this. I have my new moon intention, which again would be blank at the beginning of the month, and I fill that in on the new moon. And then I have the decks that I've been using, and over here on my calendar, I don't note much on my calendar. It's more just for me to track the moons and really important things. This day right here was a day that I was supposed to meet with Renee from Meadowlark Mystic to hang out and check out her decks, and then it kept getting pushed back because of my work conflicts, so we didn't end up doing it till at the end of the month. But that's always good, and I do like to include that on there just because that to me is sort of tarot related, even though we talk about other things besides tarot. But it just something that I like to remember. And then I have the summer solstice listed here. So here we have my summer solstice page. And again, this is a page that gets set up at the beginning of the month. So it's not in order. And I'm totally okay with that because I know my Sabbath pages, my Sabbath spreads are always directly following my monthly spread. So I just have my my little visual representations here. It's kind of like a little altar on the page is kind of how I think of it. I don't have a tendency to build a lot of elaborate altars in my house. I just don't have the space or the resources for that. So I just like to do it in my journals, and that's kind of how I connect with it. That's kind of how I connect with my practice as a whole, is I do a lot of it in my journal. So my journals are kind of a visual representation of my practice. That's totally side note there, but I just have a little bit about the summer solstice. I pull that from various places, and then I have my summer solstice spreads. Sometimes I make them up for myself. This is one that I actually found online. I think it says it's by Noble Lion Prince, I think. And I did it with my Gypsy Palace Tarot, and then of course my reading here. So then we move into my monthly or my weekly pages, where it's just, these are my daily pulls. So I pull one tarot, one oracle every day, and I just write down a message. Sometimes it's a message that comes to me intuitively. Sometimes it's a message out of a book. Sometimes it's a message that's on the card. It just kind of depends. This one I did this little butterfly. As you can see, this is just ripped out of a calendar. So like my journaling supplies aren't super fancy. This is a calendar from the dollar store, and I just ripped out the butterfly because I thought it was cool, and it went really well because I used the Sacerdote Tarot and the Oracle of Echoes. So I just thought that was really great. And then I have my weekly reflection. So here I have my new moon in Gemini. I almost always use Ethony's Tarot by the Moon spreads. I will link hers below. I did this on the new moon in Gemini, and I used the Crystal Tarot for that one. And I always like to include a bigger picture of my spreads because I do like to go back and refer to those, over the coming days. Then I also started a new practice, which I mentioned in my June reflections, where I started pulling a animal kin oracle card every week. So I included my weekly card, and I didn't really know any dates or anything because that to me, it's for the whole week. I know it's for the whole week because it follows this weekly spread, and then we'll move into the next week. I just pulled it at the beginning of the week. I wrote a little bit about the kin essence, and I wrote from the book, and it's pretty much just, I don't really have my own reflections on it or anything like that. I just have what was in the book, what I really want to connect with, because I'm working on connecting with animal energy more, and I'm trying to transition into that more. So this just helps me to reconnect with what that energy was. So I can go back and look at that. And I do have these cards up on my what I call my sacred board. I do have those up so that I can see them all week, and then I can just quickly refer to this page in my journal if I want to reconnect with that energy. So here we have the next week, and I use the Darkness of Light and the Shamanic Healing. And again, you can see just my daily draws. Sometimes I do more with a page, sometimes I do less. It just depends on how much time I have and how much energy I feel like putting into it. So then we have, so I do these spreads on Instagram. I do them, I think, like every other Wednesday or something like that. And I do them in a separate journal, and I don't know why. Probably because I have a ton of journals running around of all kinds of things, and for whatever reason, these just always ended up in a different journal. So for this month, I was like, why am I not putting those in my tarot journal? So I did actually think to include those in my tarot journal. So if you'd like to check out this and the other spreads, you can hop on over to my Instagram, and they're just on there. And of course, I'd like to include pictures of my cards. I like to include pictures of my cards whenever I can. And again, just lots of torn out things. This is from that same calendar, and some washi tape. And here we have my next kin essence for the next month, or for the next week, for this week. And it was Seahorse, and I just, wrote a little bit about it, did some scrapbooking on this one. Obviously, I felt like I had more time and energy to put into these two pages. They weren't done at the same time, obviously. This one was done on Monday, and this one was done on Wednesday, and why I flip-flopped them, I don't know. I just, when I turned this over and I was working my way through here, you know, started on Monday, flipped over here, and for whatever reason put my animal kin over here. So then when Wednesday came around and I was ready to do my spread, it ended up over here, which, you know, again, just illustrates my point that it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be in chronological order. I know what's going on here, so it's all good. I know this is my weekly card, and I know that this is the spread for this week. And here we move into the next week, which I use the Wooden Tarot and the Earthbound Oracle, which I have gushed about on my channel, I've gushed about on Instagram, and I have walkthroughs coming, and you guys are gonna get sick of seeing those two decks, I'm sure. So again, just did my daily spreads and my weekly reflection. Here I did the same thing again. I don't know. See, here we go again. And my animal kin ended up over here, but that's okay. And then I had my full moon in Sagittarius spread over here. And again, that is another one of Ethony's spreads. And I used the Paulina Tarot for that one. The next, this one, I'm going to cover this because this is actually, that's actually really personal writing over there. So this is my inner balance spread. And I do have a video coming up on how I do this one, because this is one of like my key spreads, one of my core spreads. I have 3 main spreads that I use repeatedly, and this is one of them, and I do have a video coming out on that soon with a free download. And so for this one, I used the Wooden Tarot, the Darkness of Light, and the Earthbound Oracle, and I absolutely love the interplay of dark and light in these 3 decks, and the balance of the real with the surreal. And that was really interesting. And of course, you know, over here I wrote my reflections, which, sorry, I am going to keep that private because that one actually was pretty personal. And then here we move into the last week in June. I did not pull cards on Monday because I was taking my daughter to the airport, and well, I was getting her ready for a big trip overseas, and I took her to the airport, and I just didn't have time on Monday, so I didn't pull cards. So again, just, you know, I work my practice as it works for me is kind of what I'm getting at here. I skipped Monday. That's okay. And then, you know, I just went through the rest of the week, and I did do my weekly reflections, and I added some extra, because I skipped a day, I had some extra space, so I just did some journaling. These were my cards for Friday, and I just thought they looked really cool together, or the messages were really cool together, so I just added those in there. And then we have, this was my animal kin for the week, which I was super excited to see because I love elephants and I absolutely adore this card. So this was my animal kin for this whole week, and it was just a perfect one for the week. I really, really enjoyed having this one because it was a very chaotic week. Between, you know, personal stuff and work stuff, it was kind of crazy. So I really enjoyed having that kind of calm, compassionate elephant energy to, you know, bring me back down to earth, really, throughout the day because things had gotten quite chaotic. And then here we have, this is another one of the spreads that I posted on Instagram, the Radiant spread, and I just included that in here with my cards, and I did some scrapbooking on it. And you can see that's the end. So here will be July's monthly layout, which I'm actually a little bit behind and I haven't done yet. But again, that's okay. That's something that I'm actually getting ready to sit down and do today. So that is my monthly journal, my monthly tarot journal. So moving on, we have my Self-Care Sunday journal. And this is the journal that I do every Sunday. So I can see if I can find June. Now, I switched things up this month because just like my weekly spreads that I did, it kind of dawned on me, it dawned on me that I put all this time and effort into making these images for Instagram and all that, and I don't even use them for myself. How silly is that? So rather than doing, you know, out of magazines or whatnot, for this month, I actually used my own work. Imagine that. So I just printed these off, you know, obviously to smaller size. I did some scrapbooking, added, you know, the date and my cards and just, you know, washi and my normal thing. So here was the 2nd. Here was my page for the 9th. So I do this every Sunday. So here was the 16th, the 23rd, and we have the 30th. So you can see here, I'll just show you the decks I used, the Victorian Romantic. I used the Paulina for this one. I used the Llewellyn. I used the Line Strider for this one, the Moonchild Tarot, and the Wooden Tarot. So that kind of gives you an idea of the type of decks that I use for my self-care reading. So after I started using my own images, I thought maybe I would put those together in case anybody else wanted to follow along. Now, I did think about just releasing them weekly, but I think one of the things, to be perfectly honest with you, that makes this process easier for me and makes it work for me is that I set these pages up ahead of time. And I did talk about that in my How I Journal video. So all of this gets added on at the beginning of the month. And then I just go in and I add my card or my reading, my cards. And, you know, sometimes I do some doodles or we'll add some washi. But that just allows me to really free up that time on Sunday to focus more on the reading itself and less on this, not that it's, I want to say busy work. It's not busy work. I enjoy it, but sometimes the weekends can be a little bit hectic and it's hard enough to find time just to do my reading, much less to do all the scrapbooking. So I've really found that doing this scrapbooking ahead of time and setting, you know, these pages up at the beginning of the month really does help me streamline this process. As you can see, I haven't laid out my June or my July ones yet, but I did just want to show you here. I do have in my shop all of the spreads that will be coming in July. So you can print these off and, you know, and use them in your scrapbook and do exactly the same thing. These are all of the spreads that I will be releasing in July. I will still be doing them on Instagram every Sunday, but I do have that available in my shop along with some larger printouts and worksheets that goes along with it. So that if you would like to do something similar, that's all available for you, and you can grab your copy at bohotarot.com. Okay, so enough of my sales pitch. Let's take a quick peek at my goddess journal, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I really let the ball drop on this one this month. This was the only page that I did. It was a really busy month. There was a lot of international travel going on in my family for some reason. And while I do absolutely love this page, this, as you can see, was the only page that I did. Here's, like, I didn't even finish working with this one. And you know what? That's okay. It didn't happen for me this month. I do have Artemis sitting out, or I did in June, and you know, I just didn't. This is the card from the Susan Seddon Bolet one, the Goddess Knowledge card, which I just thought was absolutely gorgeous, so I had to add it in there. I did note a little bit about Artemis. I did actually watch a documentary on Artemis on YouTube, which was really interesting, and I completely failed to note any of it down. So, you know, it just didn't happen, and that's okay. We're gonna move into July with my next goddess and keep at it. I will probably just, you know, clip this in here somewhere and call it good. You know, sometimes it just doesn't happen, and that's okay. It's still a gorgeous page, and I love having it in my journal, and I'm sure that Artemis will come up again for me, and I will dive deeper into that, into her story and her guidance, you know, if and when that's meant to be for me. So that was my goddess journal for June. So this is what I call my book of beautiful things, and this is really just a visual diary of memories. And I'm not gonna like go too far into it. This is just a drawing. This is my dog, and it's a drawing that my daughter had done for me. I'll show you a couple pages that don't have super personal things on them. These are really just things that I find, memes that friends send me, things that I find on Instagram, pictures that I find, pictures out of books and magazines, just anything that I find that is beautiful. And then I just add them in, and I keep adding to every page. I'm going to cover that up because I do have some journaling stuff in here, but I just have memories. And it's a visual representation of memories and of things that were beautiful, and just things I wanted to remember, things I wanted to I wanted to keep. Here was just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's things that catch my eye, things that I think are beautiful, and things that I want to keep. And I left this here because this is where I'm going to stop, because things start getting a little bit more personal the further back we go. But I do keep adding to it. And this has been just a gorgeous practice that it's kind of like an exercise in gratitude, but not for anything in particular. I do have a few personal things in here that are very much a gratitude record, but some of it is just like, I thought this was a gorgeous image. I love this little saying about Ewoks here. This image reminds me of my daughter. This image feels like inner growth to me. Like, it's beautiful things. It's things that make me happy. And whenever I see something that is a beautiful thing, I print it off or I write it down, and it gets put in this journal. So I just wanted to show you that one real quick. So that is what I call my book of beautiful things. So there you have it. That's a look at the journaling pages that I did in June 2019. I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek into my journals, and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.